This episode of Cape Ann Today is brought to you by the Building Center, setting the standard for quality and service since 1903.
I am here all by myself talking to Erika Brown, as Corey and I usually do every week. Hi, Erika.
Hey guys, hey, oh my
Great.
God, guys, I'm on autopilot.
Yeah.
I have,
Hi. It's so hard to not have Corey with us, but we will manage, right?
we will.
Yeah. So the big story is Manchester-Essex Regional School System.
So the school committee, the regional school district, Manchester-Essex Regional School District, finalized its budget for FY23. And it was a long time in coming. And I have to say, it was a 4-hour meeting. It was just shy of 4 hours, those poor people. And they finally came to an agreement on, and it was a compromise actually for their budget. If you remember, we've been talking about this for a while because it's been almost like a fight to make the relationship work. Does that make sense? So it hasn't been acrimonious, but it's been difficult and it's been challenging because there's been this kind of stance, this posture that the town of Essex has taken that said, listen, we can't do this way anymore. And the school committee reached out. It was a year ago that the finance committee, members of the Essex Finance Committee at town meetings surprised people. And there were members of the committee that recommended not supporting the school budget. And it was a surprise. I mean, it was quite a moment. So
when you say we can't do this anymore, Essex was saying, and this finance committee group was saying, we cannot pay these numbers anymore, right?
Well, I think what it is that we can't have these surprises anymore. Let's say it that way.
Okay.
The school committee is a big part of the town of Essex's budget. So any surprise changes are rather disruptive for that town. So that's where it's starting from. And here's where the surprises were coming from. Let's start with what the budget is. The total budget that they approved was $28,925,000, $987. So it was essentially just shy of $29 million. It represented sort of a $1 million gap, 1.13 technically, from level services, what's called level services. And even with that gap, it still represented, they were still trying to get to, the goal is to get to plus 3.5%. Now, we've talked about this before, that in a proposition 2.5 world, how is it that that the goal that everyone agrees to, the town of Essex and Manchester says is a really responsible budget, is plus 3.5%. So I look at that personally. I just think, what happens when we have inflation? But anyway, that's a different thing.
Right.
But that's the way it goes. Well, this year, the kind of basta thing that Essex said is they said, listen, our surprises have come from our assessment. Their portion of the apportionment of their share of the budget has been ballooning. In the last 3 years, it's gone up more than 3.5%. So last year it was 3.9%. And this year there were several scenarios all of which included cuts. So this wasn't like they all included cuts and dipping into reserves, which is not a good thing. So there was.
So what accounts for this?
Well, there were no good decisions. Well, they've had some. Listen, if you've run a small business, this will all sound familiar. 2018, healthcare insurance went up 28% for everybody. So the school district has to deal with COVID-related things that they don't get reimbursements for. They have to deal with health insurance. They have to deal with pensions. They have to deal with surprise things called special education, which is very, very expensive. And they don't know what it's going to be 1 year to the next, which is similar to healthcare kind of premiums, healthcare insurance premiums, things like that. So when I say level services, I'm not saying that they're spending like drunken sailors. They literally are saying this is level. They had to cut from level services. That's the sad thing for the school. They had to cut from level services just to come in.
And
so
full-time teacher, right? Was at least one full-time teacher?
Yeah. So they looked at spending. They cut a teacher that was associated with early language at the elementary school, and that's a program that has really been First of all, it's a very unique program. Not any other school district really has this. It was foreign language teaching at the elementary school level, but it's so tied to success later on with AP courses in high school. It's like a real shame that they're going to have to cut it, but they are. They're also going to turn, I believe, in-school music into a fee program, which, you know, Joe Jeanette got on several weeks ago and just said, please don't do this. They're just really hard decisions. And then, of course, the other thing they had to do is they had to dip into reserves. Now, one of the school committee members, Chris Reed, he said, listen, I'm not sure I want to do this. We shouldn't be dipping into reserves. We've talked about this before too, because your reserves, when you dip into it, it's like me rating my savings account. And then when I go for a credit card, all I can get is the 13 or 14 or 15% credit card, as opposed to the 4% credit card, because you have a good credit history, right?
Right.
Reserves are the exact same thing, and bond ratings are like a credit card rating service. So what he was saying is, he said, listen, we're going to build a school in the not too distant future. Essex Elementary School is going to have to get built in about 8 years, I believe it is. That's going to come sooner rather than later. And we're shooting ourselves in the foot if we're going to raid our reserves, draw it down, and therefore later it's going to cost us millions in additional costs to borrow money because we've been foolish today. That's a voice that really should be heard a little more. So let's get to the good news. Sarah Wolf really deserves, I mean, the whole team there deserves a lot. Teresa Whitman, she was on the collaborative group that has been meeting for a really long time, along with Sarah Wolf, who's the committee chair for the school committee. Ben Buttrick, who's the chairman of the Essex FinCom, he really has tried really hard to come at the middle. And there were these kinds of, there was this productive tone of saying, let's build for the future. We understand there's a structural problem. Let's deal with it later. Let's all compromise now. And believe it or not, they passed a compromise budget that actually came in, I believe, at 2.89% O plus. So it's actually under 5%. But that enabled Essex to come in at like 4.3% up for their apportionment. And remind ourselves, Essex, people think, and I say this over and over again, people think that Essex is growing, which it is. And they think, oh, there's tons of new Essex children in the school district. That's actually not true. The reason Essex's apportionment is ballooning so much is because they're growing moderately, but Manchester is their incoming student body is shrinking. And that's coming for two reasons. Number one, because we've talked about this, Manchester's getting old. Manchester's aging more than Essex is aging. And then also there's been anecdotal reports, and I'd like to follow up on this, that Manchester families pulled their kids during COVID because private schools still had in-person teaching and we had remote teaching. So that was another thing that I think is a contributing factor. At least that's what they said at the FinCom over in Essex, but I'd like to kind of go into that. But in the end, here's what we're looking at. At town meeting this year, they're not going to need an override in Essex, but because Essex has some challenges with their town budgets, that's a different thing. But they will be asking voters to pull a rainy day fund that they had created at town meeting last fall of $50,000 for precisely this reason, to manage the kind of hyperbolic kind of ups and downs of their assessment, of their apportionment. So they're going to ask voters to pass that. That's going to require 2/3 vote. And then next year, a year from this spring, so we're talking 2023, they're going to ask for an override, and they're going to work collaboratively with the school district committee, the school committee, to actually work towards getting there in a way that has meaningful, productive change to structural fixings to the budget, because they're not going to cut and cut and cut anymore. Otherwise, we're going to have a school district that nobody wants to go to, and that's going to hit everybody's, house, values,
right?
All that great stuff that people love. So my favorite thing of the whole night of the 4 hours was, there's a picture I'll send you of Teresa Whitman, where she's basically just going like this.
So and we all feel that way, probably. We would all feel that way at the end of the night.
The other funny thing, and I wish I had some good pictures of this, the other funny thing about the 4 hours is Jamie Belsito, who is the new rep from, she's actually from Raleigh, right? She's from Raleigh, represents Manchester. She's the new Brad Hill. until they do the the redistricting stuff. But so
Right.
she actually made the mistake of avoiding the meeting because she wanted to kind of meet new people. So she came.
Gosh.
Oh my God, it was the worst meeting for her to come down to because everyone's saying, the state, they owe us money. And she was like, what have I got myself? There were times, and she's also very emotive. So
Yeah.
there were times I was looking at her during the meeting where she was going like this. So anyway, there you go. That was a light way to end it. But it's nice to see that it ended in a way that wasn't acrimonious. Now,
Right.
that's not to say it's not painful and it's not hard, because it is. But it's honestly, they said we're willing to invest in the relationship. It almost sounded like really good therapy.
Yeah. That's great. All right. Well, let's end on a happy story. Camp, summer camp, right?
Oh, look, summer camp, well, that's something I was just so proud of, that the Manchester Cricket, we came out with our first ever camp guide. And we came out with it, I'll just show you really quickly, because here it is. Our camp guide came out. So for summer camp, and here's what made it, we're featuring all these, all these local camps, which are like amazing, at the Waldorf School, or Manchester Sailing, which has been around for 50 years,
Right.
or Camp Dory at Centennial Grove in Essex, or these great schools. Oh, who is Montserrat College of Art is having a STEAM camp, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah.
So all these, in Glen Urquhart, we have these great camps, and suddenly I'm thinking, including Sleepaway, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, camp just feels like such a good idea right now. And I really just fantastic to think that kids are going to be getting outside, and we're going to get beyond COVID. And I mean, we're not beyond it, I know, but outdoors, it just feels right, and it feels right now.
Yeah. No, I happened to read in the Gloucester Times about the Cape Ann Farmers Market, and I had the exact same experience. Like this, really, literally, my heart got warmer thinking,
Yeah.
oh, we are going to do that again.
That's right. They're going to have their opening day. Like, when is it? I put it on my calendar.
It's usually in June, I think. But it was just, I mean, the same thing with, I didn't feel this way last summer, but this spring, I really feel that way. Like getting back to normal is just going to feel so good.
That exuberance is back. You can feel it. You can feel people just getting excited at the concept of getting back to normal.
Right.
Whether the Golden Agers having their lunch next week at the Village Restaurant, or everyone doing things in person again, or the club, or all those things. So it's really
and seeing all those great faces again without a mask. Yeah.
Right.
Well, thank you so much. It's great to hear all your insights and to try, to help us navigate some really important conversations. So thank you.
You're the best. You're the best.
No, you are. Bye.
Interested in a sponsorship? Email sponsor@1623studios.org to learn more.